So we're on lesson 145 of the workbook of A Course in Miracles. And again, it's a review lesson, and the couplets are sort of held together and contained within my mind holds only what I think with God. And it's beyond this world. There is a world I want, and it is impossible to see two worlds. Now, it's interesting, and I know when we first start out with the workbook of A Course in Miracles, we're told that it's a systematic way of training our mind to a new perception of ourselves and of everything. And when we first begin, because of the nature of the mind that's been identified so long with the ego, and the nature of that is chaos, because the ego fosters chaos. It doesn't foster the ability for things to be seen within a single frame of reference. It's constantly offering you competing frames of reference so as to maintain the conflict in your mind, with the idea that it's possible to solve the conflict outside of yourself, thereby keeping you searching for what you can never find. Seek but do not find, which is, of course, the motto of the ego. Now, as we've gone through many of these lessons, especially in this first part, which is the part of the workbook that deals with undoing perception, loosening the perceptions that we have held in order for them to be shaken up, cracked, not held together solidly and rigidly as a static condition of life, but open so that the light can begin to seep in between the cracks and enlighten our mind, to show us what we have been doing and to give us the motivation to continue to do what we're doing with our own healing of our own mind and hearts through the workbook of A Course in Miracles. Now, when you begin to look at the lesson titles, you can see the brilliance by which they've been put together and the reasoning behind the system as it begins to make itself known to you in the sequentiality of the lessons as they're being offered to us. For instance, if we just go back for a second to these review lessons, we just on 143, in quiet I received God's word today, and of course my mind holds only what I think with God. All that I give is given to myself. Now the next one is my mind holds only what I think with God. There is no love but God's. And then held together with my mind holds only what I think with God's. The world I see has nothing that I want. Now remember, when we were involved in the earlier part of these lessons, the more explanatory parts of these lessons before the review, what he tells us is, it's not okay to just stop at the fact with the world holding nothing that you want. You must still want something, because your mind holds only what it holds with God. But what is it that you really want? Now we get to lesson 145, and it says, beyond this world, there is a world I want. My mind holds only what I think with God. So beyond this world, the world that I want must be held within the mind of God and held within my mind, so it's already available to us somewhere when we can get beyond seeing or get beyond thinking that the world we see with the body's eyes. And remember, initially, when Helen was taking the dictation for the course down, the word ego wasn't used, but what was used was the words eyes of the body. So when he says beyond the world I see, the world that the body's eyes sees has nothing to do with reality. So when he says, when we see in the lesson, the world I see has nothing that I want, he's referring to the world that the body's eyes sees, which the body's eyes are part of, the projection of in its entirety, based on the idea of separation and the view it presents to the body that it needs to be a solid figure within a solid dream in order to maintain the ability to keep that dream alive, by identifying with the body that's seeing, that's being used for the body's eyes to see, looking out on a world that the body's eyes thinks it sees as separate from itself. So now we go from there is no love but God's, the world I see has nothing that I want, to beyond this world there is a world I want. So the world I see has nothing that I want, but there's got to be a world that I want. And then we go, it's impossible to see two worlds. Now, you cannot see the world in its reality of creation with the body's eyes at all. So you're not going to be able to see the world that you want with the body's eyes, because the body's eyes are designed to keep you from seeing it. But that doesn't mean that you cannot come to know it. It does not mean within the spiritual eye, which was the term that Jesus used prior to the term Holy Spirit. So now we're beginning to make a distinction between seeing and vision, and where and how vision occurs as opposed to how seeing occurs. So you can go through this book, and every time you use the word ego, every time you hear the word ego, allow the ego to be associated with the body's eyes, and allow the term Holy Spirit to be associated with your spiritual eye, which now should be open to light, so that in our mind, in our heart, in our mind, we begin to allow a vision of what a real world would look like, based not upon what we've been using our eyes to see and our body to feel, but based upon the principles that we've been offered of reality. There is no love but God's. I'm eternal, I'm whole, I'm perfect, I'm infinite, I am God's love. Now, as we let those words become familiar, and we let our mind and our hearts associate with those words, we begin to develop an inner vision. We begin to envision in our mind a world that we do want, that is founded and formulated by the principles of creation that we are part and parcel of in the reality of the kingdom. And remember, when Jesus says to us that whatever we can envision, we will make manifest. Now, I'm not convinced that the body's eyes will see this entirely until it's entirely made manifest and heaven and earth cease to exist as separate states. But I do know for a fact that as you change your mind and begin to desire that which you're envisioning within your heart and your mind truly, as we identify with our reality, which is not in the world, but which is part of the world we are one with, you would begin to see everything around you differently. It will no longer be a barrier or a block to the manifesting of what we're envisioning, because we understand that it's no longer solid, it's no longer a static condition as we once thought it was. So now we're allowing that which was within us, which is being raised up within us by the utilization of these lessons in the release, and that's what's going to come next. I loosed the world from all I thought it was. You can begin to see the divine logic in the sequentiality of the systematic way that these are put together, and the reason behind what's occurring as we utilize them in the way they have been put together. And it begins to make perfect sense. Why does it begin to make perfect sense? Because it's based on the totality of the perfection of the sense and reasonability of a divine mind, which is not confused by anything, including what we think the body's eyes see. Because we're no longer believing what we've previously projected and perceived as our world, our reality, as being true. As that which is true begins to rise up within us, and in our mind's eye, because we've let the light in. Remember what he says early on. Man willfully and willingly closed his spiritual eye to the light. So therefore he must once again decide to open that eye to the light. And when you begin to allow that mind to be open to the light, because you're no longer identifying solely with the world that you're seeing as being your reality, and you've questioned the validity of that in the light of the reasonability that's being offered to you from within your heart and mind by the voice for God and the experience we're having of the guidance that we get, of the feelings that we're allowing ourselves to feel again now that we're no longer resisting the light, of the vision that the light brings to us in spite of what the body's eye sees as being solid. When we begin to allow that to rise up in us, we see the possibility of there being another world that is based solely on the principles of reality that we are created by and as. So that becomes quite natural that we begin to want that, because it really does offer us everything we want. It offers us joy. It offers us happiness. It offers us peace of mind because there's nothing against us. It offers us the ability to love and extend that love and be in love and not lose what we love and who we love and how we love. It offers us an altruistic understanding, not based on the change of the world that we see, the temporal world of space and time, but based on the certainty of being that we're created as in the reality of the kingdom, and from which we've never left, and we've never been able to really change ourselves in spite of the appearances. So you can begin to understand the divine rationale and reasoning behind the systematic way that this is being offered to us in the attempt to dislodge us from the perceptions that we've been holding and the grievances that we've needed to keep together, and protect ourselves. It's really a funny idea that we would hold grievances and want other people to suffer for things that we've perceived they've done. I mean, it's interesting when you think about it. Holding grievances is the desire for someone else to suffer. But there is no one else but you who gets the effect of your own mind. So you're the one who has to suffer. Now, I'm not saying that that maybe it's not possible to drop every grievance all at once, because they're buried so deep and they're so ingrained in us since the beginning of time, and they've stratified our experience of ourselves and established a hierarchy of being in an illusionary world, wherein which we think time is necessary to make this stratification possible. But I am saying that you have to look at the reasonability of not wanting to hold grievances so as you have a rationale to let them go. Otherwise, you're really going to think that the world around you has the ability to hold you down and make you miserable, and that if somebody else, and you want, misery loves company, so you want somebody else to suffer, so at least you have to come into admission, now wait a second, what's the sense in holding the grievance? Not that you don't hold them yet, but when you see that it makes no sense to hold grievances, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to begin to let the ones that you're using to formulate the world that's turned against you and you're a victim of, in order to begin to understand that you don't want that world, and there's a rationale for letting it go because you're the one who's making it in the retention of the grievances in order for God knows what purpose. To get back at your wife, because your ex-wife, because you think she did you wrong? Well, all the thinking that your ex-wife did you wrong is being enacted on you as you think you suffer at the hands of something else, and all the while it's the retention of your need to maintain the grievances against things that you think affected you in the past that are allowing you to be right here with me right now, where you can let go of the grievances. It really doesn't make any sense. The best you could do is offer them the gratitude that allows you to see you asked them to be that way in order for you to get to the point where you no longer want to be the way you are. Now, these are the lessons that are being brought to us by A Course in Miracles. Everything that brought you to your knees, finally you're grateful for, because you wanted ultimately to get to your knees and give up the world that you never wanted in the first place, because beyond this world, there is a world you want. And when you get down on your knees and give up trying to hold the world together in order to give you what you don't want, finally you could loose the world from all you thought it was and begin the envisioning of a new world. And the world that you thought you was, that were keeping you from the reality that you actually are part of and never left, no longer has to have the ability to control you. But it cannot happen without your own admission, without fundamental admissions that you're doing this to yourself. And finally and ultimately, you begin to like the idea that you're doing it to yourself, because if you are, you can change your mind and something else can happen. Oh, finally, you don't have to live in the same crappy world that you think has been holding you down and holding you back, simply because you're looking for somebody to blame for the situation you find yourself in, that you want to get out of. Ultimately, nobody wants to be in this world because it's not their home. Well, everything that brings you to your knees to finally give up the world is something that you need to be grateful for, because if you stay pissed off and grieving that they brought you there, you must want to stay there, and you must want something else to suffer. And in the way the mind works, the only thing that's going to suffer is you. So be my guest. But I don't know how you can read this unless you're a hobbyist and you just come home from work and you had a miserable day and you read this, it makes you feel better, so you can go back and hold it and have another miserable day and look forward to the time when death comes and ends your misery. I mean, I suppose you could do that, but it's going to get more painful rather than less painful, believe me. But we're beginning to understand that the body's eyes and the world that we're seeing, we can't see. The world I see, it's impossible to see two worlds. It's impossible to see two worlds. You can still be looking at this world, and in you a vision of a new world rising up, and in your mind's eye you begin to get the sanity, you begin to see the sanity and the reasonability of why you want that world and why you would want to participate in that world. And then you don't have to believe your body's eyes are keeping you from that world. And at a certain point in time, when you're learning as much as you're teaching, let's say, and your mind's eye is open up and there's no longer separation, you're no longer keeping yourself separate from your reality in your own mind. as above, so below, as within, so without, what begins to happen is the making manifest of the world you've been envisioning. And as heaven and earth will no longer exist as separate states, because you will be seeing what you're envisioning all around you as you make it manifest to yourself and to all your brothers. And then you become a demonstration, much as Jesus does, of the ability to live in the abundance and the eternal nature of the infinite possibilities that are brought to you, because your mind is whole and perfect, and the only thing you've wanted is the wholeness and perfection, and to share in it, because that's the only thing that you can share. You can only share wholeness. You can't share separation and partiality. And I took 3 lines and I made it into 20 minutes. So it wasn't my intention, but it's an exciting prospect. And it's quite reasonable. It's reasonable to me. And you could reason along with me if you want this to be true. I can't make you want it to be true. I can't provide you, all I can provide, the most I can do is provide you the motivation and the rationale for why it is true, and it's true for many of us already. And if you want to share in that, you would have to let it be true for you. So you'd have to give up the world and everything you've learned in the utilization of the egoic mind in order to learn it to protect yourself against reality. Why you do that after a while doesn't make any sense, especially why you continue to do it if you continue to think you're a Course in Miracles student. It makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, you finally have to realize, oh, fuck, I'm holding these grievances against myself, and I'm the one who's paying for it. Why would I want anything to suffer? Because the only thing that ever suffers is me, and I project that suffering all around. So we hold these grievances against people, and so we can't wait till they get what they deserve. Meantime, you're getting what you think they deserve, and they don't even know you're holding the grievance because they're happy. So my mind, your mind only holds, my mind, your mind, it only holds what we think we got. It's not possible to hold anything else, because we're sharing the single mind of God. Beyond this world, there's definitely a world that everyone's wanted. That's the nature. That's the nature of optimism. Of things can change. They can't change without you changing your mind. It's impossible to see 2 worlds. Of course not. The body's eyes can only see that which is projected outward, based on the solidity of the nature of the illusion. So you can't see 2 worlds with your body's eyes, but you can envision a true world within your heart and mind, and then allow that vision to be made manifest. And that's the entire purpose. At some point in time, when heaven and earth no longer exist as separate conditions, or conditions in your heart and mind, you'll be standing there like Jesus saying, and then we say, well, where is the kingdom? You say, well, come on, look around. It's all around you. Where else could it possibly be? And let those who have ears to hear, and let those that have eyes to see. And if you don't have eyes to see and ears to hear, you're going to continue living in the world that you always thought you have been. Meantime, you're going to think those that are living in reality and walking around with the new transformed mind and heart are foolish and insane and need to be locked up. Meantime, you've got yourself locked away in your own asylum, whereas you're grieving over the joy that other people experience, thinking they're laughing at you, when in fact you're keeping yourself from enjoying the joy that's within you, and you keep suppressed and repressed by the need to make this world real and rail against everything in it. So good luck with that. But these lessons are true. As he said, these lessons contain the light of God, offered to you through the intercession of a mediator called Jesus. Just simply because that one step from where we are, from where we've fallen, is much too big to take alone, and we've needed a hand to reach down and help us get up to that step where we can see what's really going on with everything that's really seeing, and where everything is seeing what's actually happening. So God bless you in your endeavors.